A story was shared with me this week about two young girls, ages 5 and 3, that had just come across and realizing that they had just seen the most magnificent rainbow. The 3-year-old said to her mom, "Mommy, did God make that rainbow?" And her mom, of course, responded, "Of course God made it." But the 5-year-old's the theologian in the family and wanted to correct mom's statement. The 5-year-old said, "Of course God made it. Only God can have such big crayons." You see, rainbows are a part of our life here, aren't they? They dazzle and amaze us every time we see them. And every once in a while, you get to see that double rainbow effect, and you look at it with just this awe, no matter how many times you see it. And of course, we know how rainbows are formed. You need the right light and the right amount of moisture in the atmosphere. When they combine and you're standing in between, you get beautiful rainbows. And we live in the land of rainbows. But you see, rainbows are these things that people travel from all over the world to come to our rainbow island to see and experience. But they also come for other things. They want to come to see the waterfalls coming down the mountains. They want to get into the ocean that surrounds our island, to see the underwater world of wonder. And some brave souls want to stay on top and surf some waves and catch the wave of their lifetime. You see, the gift of the island that we're going to explore today is water. Because we know that water is such an intricate part of our life here. We're surrounded by it. It falls upon us all the time. The streams rush by us, and we know it most certainly sustains us as we drink it. This water is this gift that, because it's the fountain of life, that can also quickly become the destroyer of life. Water can refresh, but water can also overwhelm. Water is our playground, but water is also this place that we find meditation. Water is our very first home, and throughout our lives, our steady companion. In scriptures, water is used in many ways, both literal and figuratively. Water is this element that's been a basis of all life since the beginning of time. And the ancients have always found a way to use water to describe deeper things about God, about the Spirit, about life, about us. So we think about in the scriptures how water is used as a way to bless others. You may think of those times that people spray water on you as a blessing, or that in our scriptures, water is used to bless communities and homes. We also know that the water is used in these scriptures to speak about nourishment. That literally when we drink water, we come back to life when we don't have enough. What Jesus also called was the living waters, the Spirit of God that comes into us so that we never thirst for God again, because God is in us, quenching our deep longing and thirst for God. In the scriptures, water also is used to symbolize chaos. Just think of Noah's flood and the chaos that erupts as the waters come after the rains start pouring and covers the earth. Or one of my favorite stories, Jesus asleep in the boat as a storm comes over the Sea of Galilee and becomes wavy and windy, and the disciples are screaming at Jesus, wake up, we're going to drown, don't you care?" And Jesus smiles and says, "Wind, be still, and waves calm down." And there's peace in the midst of the chaos. Maybe you've used that term, "I feel like I'm drowning in this life." It's a statement of chaos that you feel inside. In other places in our scriptures, it talks about the refreshing waters of God's justice rolling down like a mighty river. Or the great 23rd Psalm that our shepherd will lead us beside the still and calm waters so that we can drink our fill. You see, water is this thing that gives life and destroys life. It's this element that a little bit doesn't hurt us, but a lot of it can overwhelm and destroy everything that we see. And so we think about tsunamis or floods like Ina Hina. We think about Hurricane Dorian and the damage that it did in the Bahamas. That we know the power of water, but we also know that our bodies is made up mostly of water. That we are water, and water is a part of us. And when we understand that water is the symbol of life, we start seeing life all around us. Today, we turn to Psalm 104, a psalm of praise and thanksgiving. The psalmist is writing to the community to celebrate the goodness of God and how God is revealed among us. It's actually quite a long psalm, so we didn't read the whole thing. But if you did, what you notice is that it's bookended by the same phrase that holds the psalm together. The bookends start and end the psalm by saying, "Bless the Lord, O my soul." Everybody say it? "Bless the Lord, O my soul." It's a statement of hope, of promise, of praise and thanksgiving. Bless the Lord, O my soul, is this moment where we say, wow, our God is awesome. And the psalmist, in essence, is saying that by looking at the creation and what God has done. And so the first couple of verses has the image of the heavenlies, that God is somewhere up there, and God is accompanied with lightning and thunder. And the lightning is his presence, that he is light, and the thunder is his voice. And that because God speaks this world into being, all the wonder of the world happens. Then we jump into this phraseology that we just read together of how in the midst of all this, the waters covered the earth until God pushed up the mountains and pushed the waters to their edges and put the waters where they belong, into streams, into lakes, into oceans. And God is the one who is powerful over all of this water. And that we, as people, we stand in awe and in wonder in the midst of this reality. I love reading Psalms like this because I live in a scientific worldview. I took biology and chemistry and all these sciences that we have. How many else took them? How many of you barely survived them? I went into seminary because there's no classes like that or math classes. There's only one book about numbers, and it's a book in the Bible called Numbers, so it's great. But the ancients really did believe that the earth was flat, that if you went far enough east or far enough west, you would fall off the edge of the earth. They didn't have this idea of a circle that's blue with green dots on it. Instead, what they had this imagination of is that if you dared to sail far enough in the ocean, there you run out of ocean. And that above us is this blue sky that is actually waters being housed up in the heavens by God with an invisible layer that separated the waters above from the waters around us. And whenever it started to rain, it was because there was a crack in the dome. And the waters got out of the heavens and started coming down. And if there was too much water, the crack was too big. And it took God's power to heal the crack, to stop the coming of the waters. But at the same time, they also saw that that crack gave nourishment to the earth, so that the grasses of the field could grow and the plants could grow so that we could eat and the animals as well. So they had this wonderful worldview that all this water that's above us and around us and even below us in cisterns and wells, it's all controlled and given by God. It's here to bless us, though sometimes it overwhelms us. And that God is the God who is powerful enough to oversee and control the waters. Because God is a wonder worker, powerful beyond any of us and all of us combined. Maybe that's why the moment that Jesus calms the sea and stops the wind, the disciples respond by saying, "Who is this, that even the winds and the seas obey him?" It must be God. And so the psalm invites us into this wonder of, bless the Lord, O my soul. This is an amazing place that God has given us, that we are nourished by this hand of God that allows the waters to come. It doesn't diminish the reality of these natural disasters that we see around our world, and certainly are seeing now. It doesn't diminish that we have way too much water in the air right now that we call humidity, that's making it miserably hot. But what the ancients would tell you is that this is all part of God's greater plan. It's all good. Because the God that controls it is the God who's at work among us. And so in our faith tradition, we've always used water as a key part of our talking. About if you're thirsting after God, if you're really desiring God, the good news, Jesus tells the woman at the well, is that I've come to give living water, the Spirit who resides in you and flows through you. That in these scriptures, water is used as a way to cleanse and to heal that which is broken and hurting. And so one of our very sacraments is the sacrament of baptism. And what is the key element of baptism that we use? Water. And so in our congregations, throughout our 5 services, we normally have bowls that we'll use water filled. When we hold babies in our arms, or young children, or young adults, or older adults, when they come to get baptized, and we make the sign of the cross on their forehead and say, you are a child of God, and you are baptized in the name of God, your Creator, of Jesus, your Redeemer, and of the Holy Spirit, the one who sustains you today and forevermore. Bless you, child of God. It's a rite in our tradition. It's a welcoming, it's a party, it's a celebration, it's an acknowledgement of what God has already done in that person's life. And it's an outward sign of this invisible grace of God's presence at work within us. Throughout my experience here and at other churches, there's some that want to be sprinkled where you take the water and you splat them in the face. It's very disturbing. There's others that want the sign of the cross, and there's others yet still that want to be immersed in the waters and come back out. I remember this one guy here at Central Union. When I first came, he had just started coming to our church. One day he was walking by on Beretania, and he heard the organ playing a wedding song. And so he walked across the lawn, came into the sanctuary, and watched this young couple getting married, and was just inspired by the sound and the sight. He decided to come to church that Sunday. So he came to the 9 o'clock service and sat in the sanctuary and didn't really understand all the hymns, because we use those ancient words like thou and shout and all these kinds of words that we don't use, and wasn't a real big fan of organ music. And so I told him, why don't you come to the 11 o'clock? We have drums and guitars. And so he came and started to worship with us. He was amazed by the music, because it was like music he would listen to. And he paid attention to the words on the screens. And one day he called and said, can I come meet with you and ask you some questions? And so we began to meet with each other, and he would ask questions about our faith and God and who is this Jesus person. And one day I gave him a Bible. Through this journey, he had shared with me that he had lived a rough life, had never been a part of a faith community, and had moved here to care for an auntie that was sick, but really moved here in order to start over. He just exited a marriage, one of many. He lost his job. He had, in essence, kind of hit the bottom of his life and thought that maybe if I come to Hawaii, I can find new beginnings. And so he took the Bible home, and he would call or talk to me on Sundays about things that he had read. And one day he said, what is this baptism thing? And so we began to talk about baptism as the outward sign of the invisible grace of God at work. And it's a part of the community of how we gather together to bless and to celebrate what God's doing in your life. And he smiled and he said, I want to get baptized. I said, okay, let's schedule it for whatever weekend you want. And he said, no, I don't want to do it here. I want to do it where I can go underwater. He'd watched YouTube and saw people getting dunked and thought that would be the way to go. And so we scheduled to meet at Magic Island, and when we got there, a group of his friends that he had made were all learning how to play ukulele together, and they were singing Hawaiian songs, playing their ukuleles. And we talked about the symbolism and meaning of baptism and what had happened in this man's life. And we walked out into the calm waters of Magic Island until we were deep enough so that he could get baptized. And with a big smile on his face, I said, it's a joy and honor to be able to baptize you in the name of your Creator and Redeemer and Sustainer. And as I lowered him into those clear waters, his eyes were still open, his smile was still there, and I pulled him up, and this grin just got bigger than life. And I started celebrating, his friends started clapping, and he said, let's do it again. Do it again? Yeah, let's make sure it really sticks. So we did it all over again. I dunked him again. He came out celebrating again. The crowd had gathered on the beach with the ukuleles playing, and they started singing It's a Wonderful World as he came out of the water the second time. He gave me a big bear hug and said, thank you. Not too soon after, he moved back to the mainland. I never kept in touch with him as he moved and we didn't know where he went. And just this past June, as I walked in after the 9 o'clock service to put all my stuff in here, he was standing at the back door, big smile on his face. He said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Of course I remember you." And he said, "My life is so good." And standing with him was his new wife, who he met at church wherever he lives on the mainland. He said, I learned my lessons. I'm doing it differently this time. God is the center of our relationship. My faith is alive. I continue to rejoice in the God who would take someone that's a wretched like me and set me free. He said, "I just want to thank you in Central Union for the way that you played a part in my life and gave me a second chance." He sat in the back, sang all the songs with us that Sunday. As he was walking out, big grin on his face, big bear hug, and just simply said, "Thanks." You see, these waters mean something to us. These waters of baptism are an invitation to new life, to allowing God to be at work within us. And some of you may have been baptized as babies, and so you don't remember it, but your parents promised that God would be at work in your lives and they would show you the way of Christ. Maybe some of you were baptized as adults, and you remember the moment and the experience, some with a cross on your forehead, some getting dunked into a tank or out in the ocean. But there's a moment in which you awaken to the reality that God is always with you. And maybe some of you have said, "I've never thought about getting baptized," and now is the opportunity. We can go to Magic Island, or we can come in here and spray you, or make a sign of the cross on your forehead, because the way of baptism is the way of water, cleansing us and setting us free. I like to think that the story of this gentleman isn't a unique story, but the story of all of us. That there's this moment in time where we go, "Wow, God is so good." And there's this easiness, simplicity in our scriptures to remind us all the time that God is with us. That maybe today the rains will come down. As the rains fall, we look out and say, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, for God is with us." Maybe today you're heading to the beach afterwards to go play in the surf. And as you're out there seeing the wonder of creation, you say, "Bless the Lord, O my soul." Maybe you're not going to be around water, but you're going to turn on a faucet today in order to get a drink of water. And maybe it'll make you think about the living water of God that nourishes your soul. And as you take that cup and begin to drink, you say, "Bless the Lord, O my soul." For the water is a reminder of God's constancy, of God's nourishment, of God's presence with us, not just this day, but all throughout time and space. For our God is among us. Our God is with us. Our God is sustaining us and giving us life. Drink deeply, for it is the best drink you'll ever have. May it be so among us. Amen.